welcome to episode 334 of Stand Up. Today's episode is dedicated entirely to a wide range of reaction to the Derek Chauvin verdict yesterday. And joining me on today's show is over 45 Stand Up Pete Dominic listener and subscribers who joined me for an impromptu virtual hangout last night. We had over an hour and a half conversation ending with the amazing rendition of Amazing Grace that I asked our friend Vicky to give. John Carroll played along with it. It was a magical night. Public Defender Barksdale Hortenstine Jr. graces with his wisdom and presence. We saw from our friend Cornell. We heard from a whole bunch of black folks that are members of the community. And it was just amazing and magical. And I think you're going to really like it. There's so many great things that were said, reactions, passionate opinions, and I loved it. I love this community of listeners. Thank you so much for supporting this daily podcast with your paid subscription. And I want to get it started by playing a whole bunch of different reactions from across the spectrum on the Derek Chauvin trial verdict, which it was 3 weeks in the making. I read several things during our hangout, so I'll leave some of the quotes and so on. But first, I want to start with George Floyd's brother. His name is Philonise Floyd.
We have to always understand that we have to march. We will have to do this for life. We have to protest because it seems like this is a never-ending cycle. I'm going to put up a fight every day because I'm not just fighting for George anymore. I'm fighting for everybody around this world. Justice for George means freedom for all. All right.
Here's the Attorney General of Minnesota, Keith Ellison, and the prosecution team who spoke outside the courtroom just after the verdict was read.
Now the cause of justice is in your hands. And when I say your hands, I mean the hands of the people of the United States. The people who stopped and raised their voices on May 25th, 2020, were a bouquet of humanity, a phrase I stole from my friend Jerry Blackwell. A bouquet of humanity, old, young, men and women, black and white. Why did they stop? They didn't know George Floyd. They didn't know he had a beautiful family. They didn't know he had been a great athlete. And they didn't know he was a proud father or that he had people in his life who loved him. They stopped and raised their voices, and they even challenged authority because they saw his humanity. They stopped and they raised their voices because they knew that what they were seeing was wrong.
Former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama released a statement that read, "Today, a jury in Minneapolis did the right thing. But if we're being honest with ourselves, we know that true justice is about much more than a single verdict and a single trial. True justice requires that we come to terms with the fact that black Americans are treated differently every day." And the vice president and president, of course, spoke. Joe Biden asked the vice president, Kamala Harris, to come out and speak first.
Today, we feel a sigh of relief. Still, it cannot take away the pain. A measure of justice isn't the same as equal justice. This verdict brings us a step closer, and the fact is, we still have work to do. We still must reform the system.
I can't breathe. Those are George Floyd's last words. We can't let those words die with him. We have to keep hearing those words. We must not turn away. We can't turn away. We have a chance to begin to change the trajectory in this country. It's my hope and prayer that we live up to the legacy.
Dr. Jason Johnson is one of my closest friends, and he was breathing fire and truth on MSNBC after the verdict. This is hard to hear, but it's also real tough to disagree with.
Well, I'll say this, Nicole. Like I said, I actually always thought that he would be found guilty because it's sort of a cultural makeup call. But I'm not happy. I'm not pleased. I don't have any sense of satisfaction. I don't think this is a system working. I don't think this is a good thing. What this says to me is that in order to get a nominal degree of justice in this country, that a black man has to be murdered on air, viewed by the entire world. There have to be a year's worth of protests and a phalanx of other white police officers to tell one white officer that he was wrong in order to get one scintilla of justice. That doesn't make me feel happy. That doesn't make me feel satisfied. It makes me worry about what's going to happen when these other officers are held on trial. It makes me upset all the more that we didn't have this for Breonna Taylor. It makes me concerned about what's going to happen in the trial for Ahmaud Arbery. So, no, I mean, this is not the system working. This is a makeup call. This is the justice system trying to say that, hey, this is one bad apple, because that's how this is going to be interpreted. It's going to be this one bad apple. He got in trouble. Yay, blah, blah, blah. And yet there's still going to be young black men and women across this country being shot today, tomorrow, and 2 weeks from now, because unless we have some radical reform, there's no lesson learned.
Another good buddy of mine, Elie Mystal, was on MSNBC as well, said something similar to our friend Jason Johnson, but also differently. Here he is with Zerlina Maxwell.
Elie, speak to that point about the fact that it's not a victory because there was accountability in a case where there was a whole video of the entire killing and murder that we were all able to bear witness to, not just the people who were there, like in some crimes that happen in private, or the people who were eyewitnesses to the specific crime. The whole world was able to bear witness to what happened here, and now we see accountability. But to DeRay's point, it is not nearly enough to sort of upend the cycle and the potential for police to react and lobby for things that would not continue to help protect and serve the community.
No, absolutely. Look, and you said the video. It's not just the video, right? We had a 10-minute video of a murder. We had a victim who was killed while they were in handcuffs, screaming for crying out for their mother. We had nationwide protests for months. We've had years of activism by black people like DeRay and like Patrisse Cullors and like Alicia Garza. We've had a narrative that rose above the noise of a pandemic. We've had a Democratic state attorney general. We had a prosecutor willing to bring charges. We had a 3-week trial. We had 10 cops testify against this man, and we had nearly incontrovertible medical evidence about how George Floyd died. That's how we got the conviction. Other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? The level at which it took to get this one cop convicted for this one murder is not a situation that we can expect to see again and again and again. And that's the issue that DeRay is speaking to. These problems that we have, they're not about individuals. They're not about one bad cop or one good guy with the gun. They're about systemic racism. They're about a systemic decision by people in power to police our communities and to kill us in this way. If we want to change those systemic factors, we need systemic long-term changes. And to get that to happen, we need consistent pressure on our elected officials, not just from black people who we're doing what we can, but we need it from all of the white people who all of a sudden want to wear a Black Lives Matter T-shirt and talk about justice for George Floyd. We need systemic pressure from them on their legislatures to get their cops off of our necks.
Yes, fire from Elie Mystal as well. And now here's a different perspective from Fox News and white supremacist Tucker Carlson, who had a complete meltdown last night in response to a former New York corrections officer who he invited onto his show, who criticized Derek Chauvin for using excessive force on George Floyd. And here's how the interview abruptly ended, and it's just insane.
The scene. I just think that it was excessive and it shouldn't happen. And what I'd like to say,
the guy who did it looks like he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison. So I'm kind of more worried about the rest of the country, which, thanks to police inaction, in case you haven't noticed, is like boarded up. So that's more my concern. But I appreciate your coming on, Ed Gavin. Thank you. Nope, done. Thank you.
Nope, done. Thank you. Just that psycho laugh was with me all night. I wish I hadn't played it for you, but the guy is literally the Joker. Terrifying that man has a platform. apparently Brian Williams said on his broadcast that black kids should become cops to change the system from the inside out. Well, my friend Tim Wise tweeted that that's absurd. He said when good cops challenge bad cops, they get punished or run out of policing. See Cariel Horn, Michael Wood Jr., and Joe Crystal, for instance. The system's rotten and it must be replaced. He also said if you're standing at the end of a conveyor belt in a sausage factory, you might want chicken nuggets, but the machinery is constructed for sausage. Expect sausage. The system of policing was set up for marginalizing people of color and the poor. Expect both. Great tweet from Tim Wise, and I will definitely be getting him on in the next few shows to talk about all of this. And today's show is definitely a little bit different, but I'm going to skip the news dump for tonight because it's just all reaction to Derek Chauvin, although there were other things for sure. But I do want to share with you the conversation that we had at our virtual hangout. You know, it's just a very special community and definitely the very best thing that I've ever been involved with in creating this community, which I couldn't do without your support. Over 800 people subscribing to this podcast, this daily podcast, supporting my work, and so many people are involved in it. Many of them showed up at the impromptu hangout that I called yesterday. As soon as the verdict was announced, I was just so emotional and feeling alone and wanting to talk and connect with people and really hear from other people and get their reactions. And we have this really wonderful, amazingly diverse community. And so last night I said, hey, let's meet up 8 o'clock. A whole bunch of people showed up. Over 45 people showed up, along with public defender Barksdale Hortenstine Jr., several black folks, of course, who we wanted to hear from first. And it was just great. So I hope that you'll enjoy this. I hope that you will consider joining us. And if not, just supporting the podcast, because these are great conversations that we have each and every day here. So let me throw to the hangout from last night. And if you have to fast forward, get to the end, because it ended with something very special with Vicki Robinson and John Carroll doing a duet of sorts, which didn't leave a dry eye in the Zoom. I'll try to post that video for subscribers as well. I tweeted out some of it last night. I didn't edit this. I think everybody was pretty concise. There were just a couple people talking over each other, you know, a couple of those little Zoom glitches when people leave mics on and so on. But I think mostly it's pretty great, pretty good audio for that type of thing. And I really wanted to share it with everybody in hopes that you would want to be there next time and just appreciate this community that we've created with this daily podcast. So here we go. But I did just want to have this tonight to welcome you guys to hang out, to connect with you, and hopefully to listen to you and get your reactions. I'm going to record it, and if I can, put it together, and if I can edit together some good thoughts that you guys share, I'd love to share them. Just a heads up on that. People are still coming in. I did the stupid waiting room setting. It's good to see some new faces here tonight, and it's great to have some old faces, regulars. I love you all, and I'm psyched to be with you right now. So if we could just have a chat, that would be great, and I would love to hear from you. And I obviously first want to go to Dan McDonald because he's a white man. No, Dan said, I'll be there, but I'll be listening. So what do you say? Karen, you want to start us? Your reactions, your feelings, your emotions. It's been nearly a year of protest and raw emotion on this issue of the death of George Floyd, who we all saw, I think it's fair to say, lynched.
Yeah. It's hard to give it a synopsis, right? Like, I was shocked. I felt like my chest was going to explode open. I felt my heart rate increase, and then I was bawling my eyes out. And then I got a call from this person who is currently my boss's boss, and she's a white woman, and I came at her hard when this happened because I told her I was disappointed she didn't reach out to the 2 black people on her team. So we started off really rocky and we've come so far, but then she's like called me for comfort. And then I was like, this is some BS. But, still trying to give, grace just because I'm trying to just be a good person while I want to wring her neck and then still go through the emotions of, yes, this was a guilty verdict. But it doesn't mean that tomorrow my life changes or the situation changes for Black people. We still face an uphill climb in pretty much everything we do. Yet I can sit here and say, thank God for George Floyd's family. Thank God there's some, at least some accountability, and we can't get anywhere without this first step. But like, I can't do a cartwheel. I can't cheer. Like, it's a momentary sigh of relief, but then it's like, let's get back to work because we still need equity, and we don't have that.
Sounds like that woman maybe learned a lesson from not reaching out to you before and did reach out to you this time. I mean, that's what I'm hearing, but. Absolutely.
And then she was kind of like, oh, well, should I send out an email to the zone? And I actually basically.
The what? The zone?
Like the area that she covers, cover that she manages. And she was like, well, I don't know if I should write something. And I basically was like, hey, you don't have to send an email to all of these people celebrating what the verdict was. But why don't you just reach out and say, like, hey, maybe people are feeling emotional and there's a range of emotions. Maybe we should just operate in the spirit of kindness. And she just she wrote that note. So yeah, to me, that's part of the progress, right? So I can be totally happy about that. But, I still.
Well, you did a great job at trying to explain what is very, very difficult to explain. I think one easy question to get, people's reaction to is, where were you? How closely have you been paying attention to this trial? Fair to look away, I think, for a lot of folks, because it's just so traumatizing. But other reactions. And, can you actually physically do a cartwheel, even if you wanted to, Karen?
I would say this. High risk category. High risk category. Got torn ligaments. I ruptured an Achilles.
Can you move your camera back and clear a space?
I live in a condo, so no.
Ty, do you have any reaction?
Tiny house over here.
I want to ask folks. Yeah. I'm psyched that you're here. Good to see you. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah. I was just going to piggyback on what Karen said about this not being too, take a moment, right? Because this shit is stressful. Pour some libations for the ancestors and wake up tomorrow and hit that shit running. So somebody today in Discord mentioned about their neighbor bringing out the Blue Lives Matter flag when they're waiting on the verdict. Right. And I think because you've gone over the summer, it's been a little while, you might have pulled your Black Lives Matter flag and put it in the box. No. Do what Auntie Maxine said. Double down. Buy some more and go hard.
Oh God, that's absolutely insane. My reaction. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ty.
No, I'm sorry.
I was hoping law enforcement would be on the same. Let me just talk over you some more.
Trial in Columbus, Ohio, a 15-year-old child. I was just when you turned on the Zoom, I was just reading about the story.
Yeah, I just got sent.
Like, 21 minutes.
Yeah.
Yo. So yeah, no, it's not no, just keep going.
I was hoping that we would, law enforcement, that we could be on the same page. This is really good for law enforcement that guy went down. There's a lot of expert cops and unlikely suspects like your, what's her name? Piro.
Who's that?
Dan McDonald with the mic on. Surprising. And all of those, a lot of those people were in agreement, and you would hope that law enforcement would see this. But yeah, obviously we're still divided. Ryan, do you want to say anything? Sorry to just call on black people, but what am I supposed to do? I want to make sure that everybody here gets, to react and gets to listen. Ryan, any thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised, for starters. It's really sad. Everybody seems to have the same kind of reflection. Like, this shouldn't have been a place where anybody should feel, there shouldn't have been any doubt that the verdict was going to be all guilty. But unfortunately, we live in a place, let's just be honest, America's still a pretty racist place. So, nobody knew how this was going to go. So we were all kind of holding our breath. But, in the end, justice prevailed. And, we'll see what happens next time.
What am I hearing? Is that somebody's TV maybe on the background? Mute yourself, because I am trying to record some of these reactions if you can. Who else wants to react? Where were you when you heard the news? I was at the store. It's the first time I'd literally been out in the last few days, and I just had this window before my daughter's volleyball game, and so I turned on CNN, and I was listening, and I was at the store, and then that's when I realized that I shouldn't have been at the store, because I started crying. And I was at the checkout, and the woman at the cash register was a young black woman, and I wanted to tell her, because she probably didn't know the news, and I just thought maybe. And then I was like, I was buying some pots for my garden, and she was like, and I was crying, and I wouldn't look at her, and she goes, "Are you doing some planting?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm planting some things in my garden." She's like, "Oh, what are you growing?" I was like, Derek Chauvin's guilty. Fucking guilty. No, I didn't say anything that I wanted to. It just wasn't. It didn't seem like appropriate or my responsibility.
You should have told her. We're growing pot.
Huh?
Did you tell her you were growing pot?
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, I'm growing a ton of weed, which if I get arrested for, won't be a problem. But if you do, it could be a huge problem.
True.
Yeah.
I didn't want to.
Unfortunately, still true.
Yeah, it felt like a weird thing to do to break news. I wanted to scream. I was in the store. Anyway, it was a bad choice to be in the store. It was the only time I could get out, and I felt bad that I was there. But anyway, what are other people's reactions? John, you were trying to get in here. John Carroll?
Yeah, we were driving along the road, going to get a hot dog I'd been promising myself for 2 days.
Wow, that's high goals, buddy.
Yeah, it was great. And it was the brand of relief was just weird. And it took a while we both just kind of lost it. We're driving along, holding each other's arms, crying. And I'm thinking, well, it's a start. It's a start. And then I thought, why am I still, the saddest part of it was that we were all sort of collectively so dubiously bracing for the verdict in this extremely obvious lynching.
Yeah.
And that is tragic to me, that we were all holding our breaths to see if somehow they were going to slide through a loophole with this shit. And that was my main feeling, was why were we worried about this? It's not right. But I tell you, I had to look up because I wasn't sure if it was, we were on our way back from Boston yesterday when he was giving the jury instructions, when the judge was. And as he was talking, I thought, is this his words or is this straight pro forma? But I want to put it next to the front door. Implicit bias. We all have feelings, assumptions, perceptions, fears, and stereotypes about others. Some biases we're aware of, and others we might not be fully aware of, which is why they're called implicit or unconscious biases. No matter how unbiased we think we are, our brains are hardwired to make unconscious decisions. Yep. We look at others and filter what they say through the lens of our own personal experience and background. Because we all do this, we often see life and evaluate evidence in a way that tends to favor people who are like ourselves and who have had life experiences like our own. We can also have biases about people like ourselves. One common example is the automatic association of male with career and female with family. Bias can affect our thoughts, how we remember what we see and hear, whom we believe or disbelieve, and how we make important decisions. I want to hang that next to my front door, read it every day before I leave the house.
I want to have a word association now and name a category of people and see how you react. Here we go. People with tattoos on their face.
Trash. No, that's
terrible. You're terrible. Who else wants to react?
What's the association with trash?
To the verdict today? Where how did you see it? What's your reaction to it? How are you feeling about it? Anybody else want to give us a reaction? And what media have you taken in? Who's getting it right? Who's getting it wrong? There's been some obviously really thoughtful takes from people who are regulars here on the show, from Eddie Glaude Jr. to Goldie Taylor to Jason Johnson, Joy Reid, and so many more. But what else? Who else has thoughts, reactions to the verdict today? What it means? Anyone else want to say anything?
I actually have a question. Like, one of the things that, after, I saw, Mr. Crump on TV, I'm just wondering, is there going to be a backlash to all this?
From law enforcement?
Yes.
Not so much from law enforcement. It seems that there's some right wingers that are already pretty pissed.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
They never take days off.
And the other thing is, Ty, I'm sure you probably know where I'm going with this. They always feel like we have to be put in our place after we have a celebration like this. It was public. Yeah. It was all over TV, big crowds. So, my head, from everything that I've seen before, it seems that we now have to be put in our place.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid what comes next with respect to that.
The attorney said that in the trial. So when the young woman who filmed it, she was 17 at the time, the cross-examination, because I watch the trial every day, he basically did this racist trope at her at a child, and yeah, the backlash is real.
I feel like the most important
officers too.
And they're also really emboldened, like Rick Scott with his little comments about making his backlash of corporate America, and they have money, they can fight it. I mean, imagine. I think they're kind of really emboldened to be out in the open now.
Yes.
So are we.
So are we. And that's a great question and concern, Ryan. And you're certainly not alone in having that question and concern. I think that the most important thing, and somebody just put this in the chat, Andrew, and a great reminder, but I saw it put this way. Remember, none of Derek Chauvin's colleagues turned him in. He murdered a man in broad daylight, and we are here today because a brave black girl named Darnella Fraser kept taping despite threats from cops on the scene. To me, that's the most important, and there's a lot to react to, and there's so much to talk about, the systemic racism and the media, but to me, if you had to pick one thing, one detail, one hero, if you will, and nobody's getting in trouble for saying, why George Floyd died and what he died for and all this, but she is a hero. I think that's pretty fair to say, and probably the most important thing. And a lot of people reacted to that, so I just want to toss that in there. Anybody else want to react to the guilty verdict of Derek Chauvin on all three counts? Where were you when you watched it? How consequential is this? What will the backlash be? Why can't we agree on this? At least this one. I mean, I'm not going to say I understand all the other cases that happen where there aren't cameras on them, where there aren't videos, where we hear about it, or where there is a video, but it's suspect of, what happened and so on. I mean, so many of these situations are horrid, but this was 9 minutes or longer on video. And you just kind of wish if we can't come together on this one, then who are we? What are we? And yet the people of Minneapolis and that jury seem to have not a lot of issue finding him guilty on all three counts. Didn't take long to do it. And so what I didn't hear Kamala Harris, who spoke first apparently, and then apparently Joe Biden. Joe Biden did a good job. Who else? Thoughts, reactions? I'll shut up.
Did she speak already?
Yeah, I think they both spoke. John.
She did. She had a prepared speech, and then Biden had a prepared speech.
Yeah, good. I mean, that's really important. But, I think words are always important, especially when we haven't heard words like this from our leaders before. But actions obviously are so much more important, and we obviously need reforms, major reforms for law enforcement. Elon Omar tweeted, This is but a minuscule step on the path to justice. Next stops, independent agency to investigate police misuse of force, criminalize violence against protesters, demilitarize police departments, disband and deconstruct failed police departments. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says that a family had to lose a son, brother, and father, that a teenage girl had to film and post a murder, that millions across the country had to organize and march just for George Floyd to be seen and valued is not justice, and this verdict is not a substitute for policy change. So both those policymakers making great points about policy changes, actual reforms, and we can talk about and argue about what needs to be done, but clearly there is a major, major issue and demand for law enforcement reform. Call it whatever you want. Sentencing is in 8 weeks, Tina just threw in the chat. What else do we need to know? What else do you guys want to say? Anybody else want to react?
So, yeah.
Hey, Pete.
Oh, go ahead.
Pete, sorry, I was on video. Can you hear me?
There's Adam, who I was going to talk to just you and I tonight, but I decided let's go wide because Adam is in Minneapolis, and I wanted to get your take on a local reaction. Great to see you, buddy. Thank you for joining.
Yeah. We're feeling super relaxed here. Super relaxed.
That is an infant child in your lap. Oh, that is so great. What does he or she think of the verdict?
She's obviously very relieved, but I will say it's been kind of embarrassing just for a while to be associated with such a heinous act. And I live in the neighborhood. I'm pretty close to where he was murdered. My neighborhood essentially was burned during the riots. It was mostly Nazis and white supremacists that we were trying to chase out of here to burn the rest of our city down. But I will say I'm proud of my fellow 12 citizens that deliberated for a good amount of time and came back and judged it by the law and is sending that dude away. And I'll say, like, I'm happy. I'm relieved. I know there's work to be done, but somewhat chilling that dude was stone faced as fuck when he heard he was going to prison for the rest of his life, as he was when he was snuffing the life out of George. And like, that was pretty sick. But hopefully Minneapolis can go back to being known for having really terrible sports teams that disappoint us instead of racist cops.
What is that's really well said. And I'm so glad to get your perspective there in Minneapolis. What has the last year been like?
I mean, I come from a certain perspective. Obviously you can see the lack of pigment in my face or whatever you might call it. But, it sucked. When he was murdered, I remember my buddy texted me. It's like, hey, do you want to go to the protest tonight? And I was like, what protest? And so I watched the video, went to a protest. There was obviously righteous anger. It boiled over. And then that literal Nazi, if you remember Umbrella Man, he went viral. He busted the windows out on that AutoZone. A buddy must have come in right behind him, lit the match, and like literally lit the match that started burning down the city. And we were living in essentially a lawless zone for a week. The city's putting out a message to us in the neighborhood. I remember it was a Saturday after a lot of the burning, that said, if you call 911, no one's going to come. So you guys need to band together and figure it out for yourselves. Wow. And the city literally said, pack a go bag in case you got to go, water down your fence. We were finding kerosene stashed in our alley.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was sick, man. And like that like most of if you look at the people who were arrested for rioting, most of them were white people. And like I said, the one guy was an actual Aryan Nation Nazi.
Yeah. I learned that from you. I didn't know about all that, and getting your perspective there and learning about Umbrella Man and hearing that from you was really valuable. Also seems a little bit elitist to have your own alley. I'm not going to lie. That's how a lot of us heard it sounding.
My alley. Yeah.
He said, in my alley. Adam,
so
really,
it's been rough, but that was a relief today for a number of reasons. But just thinking hyper locally,
it's great.
I just wanted peace in the city tonight. Peace would be, and I'm glad that that's likely going to happen unless we get a bunch of hillbillies coming into town causing shit. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Let's get one more shot of that infant that you're rocking here for those of you that are at the Zoom. That was so great. Congrats, buddy.
Little Evangeline. She's 9 months today.
Oh, she is beautiful. I mean, what am I supposed to say?
She looks cozy.
Does anybody ever say anything but that about a beautiful baby there? So let me go to, I think Megan had her hand up, and I just see that Barksdale Hortenstine Jr. is gracing us with his presence, and he's one of the all-time greatest guests on this show. He's a public defender. He's a hero of mine down in New Orleans, and so I definitely want to hear from him. He also does look like a Confederate reenactor, and I'm not sure what those logos are behind him, so if anybody feels triggered or unsafe, you're not to be blamed, but once you hear him talk, you'll realize he's one of the very good guys, and I'm going to go to him in a second, but I think, Megan, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something before I...
Yeah, I didn't have my video on, sorry.
That's all right.
I'm out walking so that I'm not working. I'm focusing on you all tonight.
Oh, great.
I'm here for you guys.
Great
and
to
I
have
think
you.
One of the media things I saw on Twitter, which I should have seen before, but I hadn't, was the police report. It's like 6 lines, and it says nothing of him kneeling.
The original police report, that didn't take into account the fact that there were a whole bunch of witnesses filming that. I'm sure Barksdale has thoughts on that. Go ahead, Megan.
So the impact of that, of how many stories have been erased exactly in that manner because there wasn't a video.
Hey, Megan, I'm going to mention something really quick. When Emmett Till, we all know the story where they said, he whistled at a white woman. Well, Emmett had a stuttering problem, and his mother told him, if you ever get into trouble, you're trying to talk, just whistle. Right?
A lot of people bringing up Emmett Till today. Let's go to our friend Barksdale Hortenstine Jr., who I met through hosting this show, and he has been just an amazing friend and guest, and he's introduced me to so many other people. He is a public defender down in New Orleans, focuses on mental health, where he's the director of the Municipal Court Mental Health Unit, and we are so psyched to have you joining us tonight. And I'm not sure what questions to ask you, but you clearly see this through a different lens, doing what you do down there in New Orleans. So maybe you can interview yourself on the relevant questions. Barksdale, we're psyched to have you, buddy.
Thank you, Pete. I'm happy to be here, and I do like to talk. So interviewing myself is an attractive proposal. I always have very difficult, conflicting feelings when these stories happen, because I am pretty much a prison abolitionist. I don't believe that prison is the answer to anything. I think that, as we've talked about before, and I'm not always that popular with my crowd for it, but I have clients who aren't safe for themselves or for other people, and they need to be outside of our society if they're going to be taken care of and if we're going to be safe. But they don't need to be in a cell. They don't need to be in squirrel cages. You can Google that for Louisiana history and some fun with that. They don't need to be locked up and thrown away and forgot about. On the other hand, the systemic racist control that this country has exerted over the last 400 years, and in its most recent form through the carceral system, is never applied to the police and the people in positions of power the way it is applied to the people of color and to the poor and to the those who don't have the political power of the rich white landowner and their generational wealth and strength. And so when a decision like this happens, it is really conflicting for me. I don't want anyone to be in prison, but it's hard to resist the pull that I'm sure others feel when they think of my clients and how much they want those people to be thrown away and imprisoned, because I see those 6 sentence reports that the last person was mentioning. I read those, 8 sentence gists, they're called in the professional terminology, where somebody's entire life is being determined by the sketched out 6 sentences somebody with often not even a much more than a high school degree, if that, is written, riddled with spelling errors, not caring enough to actually take the time to do it correctly. And in this instance, the 6 sentences not containing salient facts like his knee was on the man's throat.
We're talking about the police report. These police reports.
Yeah, that's right. These police reports, those first reports, they're called gists, and you get them for the first court setting, which is it happens that, after arrest, you go before a judge, and the judge determines whether there's probable cause to hold you. And that happens in the first 48 hours maximum. You can't take longer than 2 days before you're before a judge to find probable cause. But police write down the gists. That's the handwritten or typed up form, which is not an arrest warrant, but it is like a sworn statement by them justifying the arrest and the cause for the arrest. And then the judge determines whether there's probable cause. And for 15 years, I've been a public defender, and I would say probably 1 in 500, there's not probable cause. And, in reality, about 50% lack probable cause, at least for the charge that's being brought. But, judges, they just do what cops say. And we live in a weird police state. It's a bizarre reality that you don't know about if you're not there. If you're not in the court, either as an officer of the court or a participant in its shenanigans, you don't realize the level of police state we live in and total control that police officers have. I've had a room full of people all waiting for their case to be called, and I've done a motion hearing and had the officer explain how he smelled marijuana from the passenger side door with the window rolled down on a freeway, a highway, on freeway is where I'm from. That was 1 gram of marijuana in a baggie in a tin. The tin was in a backpack. The backpack was in the trunk of the car, and he was on a freeway with cars passing, and he smelled marijuana. And the whole crowd is laughing. And this is the public court. This is what we're supposed to have, a public court, so that society can watch and judge whether this is a fair administration of justice. The whole fucking audience is cracking up laughing, and the judge is sort of smirking. And then it comes time to suppress the evidence because clearly the cop is lying. And the judge sort of looks down and says, okay, well, he said that he smelled it, so that's probable cause, and that means the search is legal, and I'm going to admit the evidence. And that's not one story. That's an amalgamation of 20, 30 events where that, more than that, 50 times, where I've had very similar fact patterns. Absurd. The judge knows is absurd, but they're willing to extend all disbelief in order to facilitate the process. And that means letting cops do what they need to do, say what they need to say. And that's true because the cops use our words. The cops use the lawyer's words. I saw it in plain sight. Well, plain sight's a legal term of art to explain whether or not the individual is in a lawful place when he saw it. But they say, I saw it in plain sight. After I entered the car and I opened up the compartment, I then saw it in plain sight. So they don't fucking know what it means, but they know they have to say it that way because then it's a legal search. It's tough. And you get angry at the system. You get angry at the participants of the system. Angry at the cops for lying. I don't have a problem with a cop. And this also gets me in a lot of trouble with my friends. I don't have a problem with a cop searching people illegally. I have a problem with that cop searching someone illegally and then lying to bring that evidence into court against that person. If the cop is willing to take the risk that illegal search is going to reveal a weapon that was used in a murder and they will not be able to prosecute the person for the murder because it was an illegal search, I don't mind that he does the illegal search. But the moment he does that and then gets on a stand and lies and says, oh, judge, I clearly and plainly saw this firearm sticking out from the waistband that he couldn't see, or I smelled marijuana from a car as cars are passing him.
That's bullshit. You can't have it both ways. You can't cheat and lie and then have the whole justice system just check the boxes and say, yeah, that works. We're good. People won't take that. People can't take that. And that's when you get anger and loss of trust. Well, you can't prosecute cases well because the community won't talk. Right. The community won't talk because they don't trust the police because the police lie.
Barksdale Hortenstine has over 20 years of experience working and obviously with law enforcement as a public defender. I think public defenders are some of the most important people in the world. I mean, when you're talking about criminal justice, very few people know more about what's wrong than the public defenders. Even the population that is being policed has no idea, for the most part, about their rights, about the laws, about all of the tricks that get used. But the public defender knows all about it. So a great person, and I'm so glad that you're here tonight to have joining us. And so if anybody has a question, Barksdale is awesome. I know a lot of people just want to ask about the art behind him and are wondering if he has a musket. But no, that's not what we're talking about here today. No, that's a Warsaw test of something. Oh, no, it's two birds kissing. What is that?
This one is actually Lindsay's, Pete. Thank you for inviting me on. But this is my wife's painting.
Lindsay also works at the Orleans Public Defenders. Yeah,
Jermaine Rogers, an incredible artist from Houston, who everyone should go look up his website and buy art from him. I love Jermaine. He's great political artist, and this is a piece of his with the Japan's flag background.
I have a mug that I keep pens in from a John King USA short-lived CNN show.
What is
okay, so who's got questions? And Barksdale, I mean, let me just ask first if anybody has a question for him. But when we talk about police reform, I think one of the most common reactions tonight, especially from black folks, is, yeah, good, but we need massive reform. This is, as Jason Johnson said, one scintilla of justice. Where do we start? This is an hours-long conversation. There have been panels. There have been, documentaries made about the militarization of police and qualified immunity, and we can talk about weapons and so on. But where would what would you say where we should start? Obviously, you're in New Orleans, but I think the problems, while are different, municipality to state, there's a lot of similarity in terms of how much power police, law enforcement have. And Ben, by the way, the best tweet I've seen in weeks from Michael Harriet, who's great over at The Root, who writes, those good apples are quiet as fuck.
Pete, I think that's the problem with the concept of reform right there, is that we're asking the people who have gotten away with some of the most egregious behavior for so long and either perpetrated it or sat by silently acceding to that behavior. And we're asking that group to check the reform box to say, yeah, I'm good with this reform. I'll sign off on this reform. And you can't ask, right, the militarized police force who we've entrusted with our mental health policing, which is not a thing, but is for them. We've entrusted with a war on our citizenry over drugs that we have enlisted to save us from our neighbors rather than to know our neighbors. You can't then ask them to, okay, wait, this has gotten out of hand. We made you guys into a bunch of warriors and soldiers, and we don't want that. We need those bobbies from the nice, YouTube video. I love that YouTube video of the police in England. And there's a guy with a machete in the street, and he's just waving it everywhere. Yeah. And unarmed responding officers arrive. And they keep a distance, and they start trying to engage in conversation. They're de-escalating. They're using de-escalation tactics, and they get on for backup and more backup and more backup. And there's 30 cops, and they've all got riot shields. No one's got a gun, and they're slowly, progressively moving in on him until they can keep him contained, keep him from hurting others, and in this case, keep him from hurting himself. We don't go to that from what we've got right now. And we certainly don't get there by asking their permission and their suggestions on how to do it. And that's what we're doing. We're saying, police, what do you think about these reforms? We have these city councils who get a lot of info from their citizens and say, oh, man, we got to do something. We're in a lot of trouble. And then they have hearings. And who do they invite? The chief of police. And they say, here are our recommended changes. And the police are like, well, I can sign off on these two. These are great. But this third one, that's just outrageous. You're going to put our officers at harm. Well, like, man, it's not that policing isn't a dangerous field, but more people get injured in trash duty.
It's not in the top 10 is what I always see.
Enforcement.
Yeah. Agriculture and cutting up chickens.
We treat it like it is, you're a saint. Thank God you came to this force that no one asked you to join. You came and joined. You became a part of. You took on the responsibility. Then you trounced it. And said, fuck all these neighbors of mine and all the citizens. They don't even live in the communities. So in New Orleans, like the majority of police, they don't even live in New Orleans. They live in Jefferson Parish. They live in Metairie and
right. You know, it's interesting. I was listening to an interview about the Rodney King case, and in that case, there was a lot of similarities, but mainly in that it was a black man having shit kicked out of him by a bunch of police, and it was caught on camera. But there were a lot
of similarities with that every single day.
But yeah, well, of course, but there are a lot of differences in terms of the case. Like they moved the case out of L.A. into the Simi Valley, which is where all the cops lived, and that's where their jury pool was. They desperately wanted this, the whites especially, moved out of Minneapolis and into some other place. And of course, they didn't do that. And thankfully, they didn't do that. But that's a huge issue. Just another issue about law enforcement not living in the communities that they actually police. Go ahead,
in Orleans, man, like we don't do death penalty in New Orleans, right? Like we're just not a death penalty town. The last people we put on death row was in 97, maybe 98. And it was a police officer who had been involved in a armed robbery of a Chinese food restaurant and subsequent murder of the people. She was working there I think her boyfriend was working there as a guard, and they rolled the place and they killed them because there were witnesses. And before her, there were some police very famously that were, accused of being hitmen. We do not have a great history in New Orleans of ethical policing. But if we did, and it still resulted in illegal detention of young black bodies, their brutality in treatment and arrest for things that they didn't do over and over like it has, even if we didn't have that history, we would need it to change, and we would need people uninvolved with it changing it. Right. And it's like Ty said, right? Like so much stuff that happened during Katrina. But yeah, the Danziger Bridge and the fact that I know the lawyers who represented those cops. I know what they did. And the cops in that case, there were about 5 of them ultimately went to trial, and they all rallied together. It was an incredibly brilliant defense strategy. And the 5 of them all joined together in their defense to hang one of them out, including the one. I mean, he was part of it. He would take the hit and the rest would walk, and it worked.
Right.
And the one guy got hit, and then the guy that got he got an appeal and won the appeal. And so now he's back in court. So and these are things that happen 5 and 10 and 15 and 20 years down the line. And, I knew a cop early in my career who I watched testify, and I went up to him after the trial. I said, look, man, I don't understand. You're clearly lying, because I was real young and I was stupid. I was willing to just say to the guy, look, you're obviously lying. No one could possibly believe you. And he said, look, I know that guy. I coached him 5 years ago when he was on my football team in high school. I know him. He's killed 2 people. I'm putting him in prison. And he had told his story. It was clearly a lie. No one could believe it. They convicted the dude in 15 minutes. Now, I kept up with that cop. And 2-3 years later, he got arrested for aggravated rape because he continuously was having sex with people to get them out of their charges. He did 3 years on aggravated rape. My clients spend their entire lives in prison because of an aggravated rape charge. Well, the best deal I've ever gotten on an aggravated rape charge is 30 years. He did 3 years. He got sentenced to 5, and then they reduced it to 3.
God. That police union boss in Boston been raping girls, and everybody knew it.
The system is for the cops.
System is for the cops. Barksdale Hortenstine, so happy to have you here. Who else has questions for Barksdale, who's a public defender in New Orleans and just an amazing, amazing guy? Karen, I see your hand up, comment, question, going back to the great Karen Madison, who started us off here tonight.
Thanks, Barksdale. When we're talking about reimagining policing, defunding the police, however you want to call it, I mean, how do you take that power away from the police unions? Because they seem like we're like the biggest hurdle to get past.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I think you got to take a page out of the Republicans' playbook on unions, and you just got to defang the union. And the problem is the Republicans are all about unions for cops. They're just not for teachers. Great for them, just not for the auto workers.
Yep.
Or Amazon workers, or, anything that black people have any kind of actual, no, except for the cops. Those black people, they can get protection of unions, but the ones who are working to improve their neighborhood and their friends and their lives, they don't get the protection of unions. Yeah. I think that the way you have to approach that problem is you have to show political actors that there is support for them in holding others to account. And the problem is we as citizens have been too lax in our duty as citizens and too passive and accepting of the police taking this role to begin with, and say, well, take care of that guy. He's trashy. Something's wrong with him. Oh man, there's something really weird about that guy in the corner. I wish the police would just take him away. I don't want to deal with that. We need to be more return to community. Doesn't need to be returned to the damn 50s, but we need to return to community where we care about one another and we look for other answers to our problems besides locking folk up. And if you show your elected official at the local level, at the state level, and then ultimately maybe it trickles up to federal level, but I don't even worry about that stuff anymore. For me, it's all local all the time. And if I can get my local councilman to realize there's enough voices saying, I am willing to accept that some bad things will happen in the world. I want to see change in this. I don't want to see these same faces. I don't want to see these same procedures. I don't want my nice windows, and I don't want all that. I want to have people who have a chance at a life. And the way we do that is we get these cops off these streets. We need to have them stop this proactive bullshit, and we need to let our kids grow up. I mean, when I was a kid, I got into all kinds of mess, right? I did all kinds of terrible stuff I should never have done. Yeah. If I were black, if I were brown in Houston, if I'd been brown, and if I had been from a different zip code than the one I'm in, I'd have been in jail. Oh, and from jail, I would have not gone to college, and then I'd not gone to law school, and I wouldn't have been a lawyer.
I think
but because I was white and I lived in the zip code that I need to live in. Here I am talking to all you fine folks. I gave a guest lecture at Tulane this morning. I'm running a mental health unit. I'm the same person who did all that bad shit as a kid, but I got a chance to grow up. My clients don't get that chance. Mm-hmm. And most of them who don't get that chance, they also have mental health problems. Mm-hmm. Because in the city of New Orleans, mamas drink because it's good to, because everyone tells them to, because the bartenders sell them drinks while they're fucking 8 months pregnant, because it's cultural and it's just how no bullshit. It's a lack of education and understanding and community and desire to make everyone have a better chance so we can all grow up and have a fun time playing together. Like, grown-ups need to stop acting like it's anything other than the schoolyard. Like, that's life. Life is the schoolyard. We're all just playing. Let's play and have fun. Let's not play and hurt each other and see who can climb that sandbox faster. Let's all fucking swing together. And but it takes people convincing the political structure that their seat, their skim, their grift is safe. It's fine. I'm still going to be here supporting you. Your seat is taken care of. Get rid of the fucking cops. We need different police. We need police who care about community. And they don't have that message yet, right? When they get that message and they know the money's there for them, then they'll pivot and they'll be okay with it. At least they'll be willing to take that risk. But we also got to have their back when shit goes bad, right? We've got a new prosecutor in our town. He's a real progressive prosecutor, allegedly. We'll see. I mean, he's a friend of mine, and I love him. But man, I hope he gets that office turned around. But he's got to be held to account. But he's also got to be given the opportunity to do it. And when something bad happens, when a cop gets murdered, when a kid gets killed, it's not the fault of the progressive policies, just like it wasn't the benefit yielded by having the aggressive cops, because that shit was happening 2 years ago. So like you can't pick out the bad moments and be like, see, this is because we tried that progressive stuff.
You can, and they do, and that's why it's so convincing. The last couple of days, I forced myself to listen to Ben Shapiro and this other guy named Steven Crowder, who is horrible, and the narratives that they weave are very, very effective. And they one of the most effective things that they do is they point at anecdotes and say, look at the media never tells you about this black person doing something. They never tell you about this cop doing, and it's so effective, but they are just simply anecdotes. And then progressives always like to look at the entire data of a community, of a population, and it's just not always the most effective. I'm so glad that you're here tonight. That your passion and your experience are so valued here in this community. Christine has her hand up. Go ahead.
Well, Barksdale, I got to tell you, all hail public defenders. I started as a paralegal in Milwaukee at the public defender's office, and I work at the Capitol Habeas Unit in Sacramento now, and I idolize.
Wonderful.
I'm telling you, the most brilliant attorneys that don't get paid enough are public defenders. They're incredible. But I got to tell you, I had the same conflict you do, because it's very hard at working defense and seeing anybody that you know they should do better go to prison. But I also have to remember the ACLU and got a restraining order on the cops for the journalists because they were shooting them with bullets and arresting them and shoving them down. And you know how far that federal district judge's restraining order went? That night, they did the exact same stuff. That's a blue wall. That's not one bad apple. That's a blue wall. And this guy, it's war. It's civil war. The cops are not going to back down because we got one conviction. And I have to remember that because I've seen them take really good people and throw their lives away like snotty Kleenex.
All right.
All my
No, I agree with you, Christine. Thank you. Thank you for the work you do. You're right. And I think the thing that is most tragic about it is that blue wall, that silence, but people talk about the silence because that's easy to see. And people talk about the bad apple because that's easy to see. There are a whole lot of bad apples. There's a whole lot of rot around that bad apple that assists the bad apple to get away with it, facilitates it. When I was on the way to speak to this social work class this morning at Tulane, I had my paralegal join me because we had just done our quarterly report for my mental health unit, and I wanted him to help explain the data that we've been collecting and what we were deriving from it. Then my PowerPoint didn't work, so I didn't get to. But he graduated from Tulane last year, and he was excited to join me, and we're heading there. And he calls me, and he's like, "Man, I don't know, I might not make it. What's up?" He's being threatened with arrest by a police officer on Tulane's campus, Tulane police officer, because he saw a man being harassed by police who was shouting, I can't breathe, as the police were on his back and cuffing him and trying to pull him up. He had clear signs of psychosis. He was clearly mentally ill, and that's the work we do, and he's trained to see that. And he stayed and accompanied the guy, was talking to him and was filming it. And the police said, if you don't leave right now, I'm going to arrest you. So he called me, let me know. And then ultimately he wrote him a summons, and like, you know, the cop's boss tried to get him not to. The sergeant on the scene tried to get the cop to stop, to stand down, and apologize on video to my paralegal. And, you know, this is the boss standing there saying, well, I didn't see anything, but I arrived late, so maybe something happened before. He knows who he's got on his hands. He knows what that cop's doing. He knows he has no right to tell my coworker to move on. He's got no right to tell him to get out of there, that this is police business. You can't do that. He knows that. But he allowed it. He permitted it.
Let me tell you, when I started at the public defender's office in Sacramento, I came from Wisconsin. I did not realize it was the 90s, what they were doing with 3 strikes in California and how they were locking up people for spitting on the sidewalk.
Yeah. Horrible.
I stood up for a 3-striker. They came into the public defenders. They came into the federal public defender's office and took me out in handcuffs on trumped up charges because I had stood up for them. I'm telling you, they do not play.
They don't play. We've had two investigators.
2 years to get a factual innocence hearing.
I like you so much, Christine. I want to kick somebody's ass. I want to fight somebody right now. Sad thing is, I'd get my ass kicked immediately standing up for you. Like, yo, did you arrest Christine, motherfucker? Oh, sorry. There goes Dominic. Barksdale, one of the questions Brady just asked to ask, can you ask Barksdale what is the best way for us to help? And I actually want to suggest a kind of a line of questions to keep listening, number one, to keep calling people out and things out, number two. But you already said it too. You kind of almost dismissed the idea of a national movement or national action, congressional action, but looking at what you can do in your local municipality. I also interviewed a guy named Jim Freeman, who I think I was going to post on tomorrow's podcast, but he wrote a book called Rich Thanks to Racism. It's such an important book. And he also talks about, here's his suggestion. I want you to pick up on this. Find the local groups. There already are activists in your local area right now. You don't have to go start your own thing. You can go join one right now. So look locally and you can help people who are fighting racial injustice in your community. But what is your answer to what we can do?
100% double down on that. I couldn't agree more. As you picked up earlier, I said it's all about local for me. I'm a smart guy. I've had all the benefits anyone could ever have in this life. I've been more lucky than anyone has a right to be. I've got 2 beautiful kids. I've got a beautiful, loving wife and supportive spouse. I'm so wonderfully lucky. And the way I can try to transfer that joy into positives for others who haven't had the fortune, the veil of ignorance, luck of the draw that I had, is to invest my time and effort in changing the local scene, changing what is happening in my neighborhood, changing what's happening in my ward is how we break them up here, changing what happens in my district, and then getting the right people on the right, everything from school board to city council to dog catcher, because there's a reason there's a good dog catcher and there's a bad dog catcher. There's a good person who wants that spot on the school board, not to catapult into some other thing, but to represent the interests that her children, she saw her children or his children suffer through. She wants to make sure no one else goes through that. Right. They need to be on that seat, not the person who's been running for, the perennial candidate who just wants to get his name in the lights, right? Or maybe who's hoping to jump that seat into a city council's position so they can get in the state legislature for God knows what reason. I don't know why half the people who go through these ordeals that elections are do it. Knowing many of them personally, honestly, there's no reason for some of them to run. Yeah. It's illogical. But if they got their heart in it, then I'm in it. If they're good people, they got good view, let's support it. Find out who those are and push for them. Go out and canvas for them. Go out and talk to people in the community and educate them about what you've learned, and listen to the other people in the community whose experience may be different from yours. I think I know a lot, but I'm stupid as shit. I may be very, very smart, but I don't know plenty. And every day I talk to somebody, I learn how little I know about the world.
Well, it's like the idea of, you're being modest, but it's the idea of going into somebody else's house and telling them how to deal with their family, or going into somebody else's community, and even though you're an expert, telling them how to solve their problem. You first have to listen to the people in the community who are dealing with the problems. And I'm psyched to have you here. I see that our friend Cornell has just joined us, and it's great to see you, buddy. You haven't been on our hangouts in a long time. He is never one to be quiet. Super thoughtful guy. Did run for office. Francis writes in the chat: vote, volunteer, mentor. Cornell, we've been talking to Barksdale. Hortenstine, of course, a public defender in New Orleans. And what was whose mic is on? Who am I hearing? I hear a phone. I hear a TV. I hear something. I'm recording this for the episode. Okay, it's gone.
Sorry, that
was you, Cornell?
Yeah, I'm actually on 2 Zooms right now. Sorry.
You're on you're double Zooming me right now?
Yeah. Well,
you're cheating?
Here's the thing. The other
Who are you
thing
with?
I'm
Are you
on
with
is
Ben
actually,
Shapiro?
You're funny. No, I'm actually doing what Barksdale's talking about. I'm literally on a committee meeting right now, but we're talking about something I know about, so I can put that down for a minute. So, yeah.
What is your reaction? I know you just joined us and we've been talking for a while, but what is your reaction to today's guilty verdict of Derek Chauvin in Minneapolis?
Well, I wrote about this on my Facebook, and my reaction is, we can be happy tonight, and you should absolutely celebrate, joyful moments like this. But if anybody thinks this is going to be some kind of like earth-shattering judgment, it's not. Likely, Derek Chauvin is going to get time knocked off of his sentence, and he's likely going to get out earlier than he was supposed to for good behavior, because the blue wall is still really powerful. It has been built over centuries. It's not just going to go down because of this one judgment. So be happy tonight, but also understand there's still a system in place that needs to be addressed. One cop is not going to tear this whole thing down. I mean, anybody deciding this is going to be some kind of monumental thing are the same people that got fooled thinking that Obama getting elected in 2008 was going to, part the seas and bring us racial equality. It didn't happen. It's not going to happen. So it's a victory. We need to be happy about it. We need to learn from it. And we need to keep our eyes on all of the balls that are moving, because there are tons of situations very much like this going on all over the country that are likely to not go this way. And we've got to keep our eye on that.
Daily. Elie Mystal, my friend Elie Mystal, who's just another American hero, writing at The Nation, where he's the justice correspondent, just reading the end of his post tonight, which he put up after the verdict was read. He writes, the next victim is unlikely to die in a way that white people will recognize as flagrantly unjust. The next unarmed black man killed by police is unlikely to spend 9 minutes calling out for his mother as the cops slowly choke the life out of him. Most of us die far too quickly for the white news media to see our agony. The Chauvin conviction is important, but it's not repeatable. It's a floor, not a ladder. George Floyd's family can finally begin the process of healing. They have received some measure of justice, and hopefully they can find peace. But the rest of us have to get back to work. Barksdale, anybody else want to ask Barksdale a question? I'm going to wrap it up here and post this hour chat, because I think it's pretty goddamn good for tomorrow's podcast, because so many of you guys contributed and said very thoughtful things. So if anybody else wants to say anything or ask anything, go ahead. And do you agree, by the way, Barksdale, that do you think that his sentence will get lessened?
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I was looking at it yesterday. I don't remember exactly, but I think he's looking at 120 months, a little bit more maybe. And those are the sentencing guidelines before any downward departures, and almost certainly he'll get downward departures. I'd say this I always say this about these things. Don't be mad at his less sentence. Be furious that everyone else's sentence is so high, right? Like, we need to invest in reforming people so that they can be contributing members to our society and not trying to get pounds of flesh.
Yes, remake
And we spend way too much of our time building our own prisons in our hearts and not being willing to give people the opportunity to reform. And if we don't have the opportunity to reform and to improve ourselves, then what's the point? As soon as you've done the bad thing, the worst thing you've ever done, that's it. That's your life. It's over. Just finish. And if we don't give people the opportunity to come back from that, then I think we're morally bankrupt. I think we're a piece of dog shit. But I also think we're not motivating people to be the best person they can be and to achieve what they can achieve. And so don't be mad that he gets a low sentence. Be outraged that the young black man who, did half as bad a thing is doing 3 times more time when he shouldn't have been doing any time. He should be in some drug rehab program or some mental health program or getting assistance or, having cognitive behavioral therapy, relying on science and facts and reality to shape our judgment on how people should be improved, how our world should be improved, rather than fear and hatred and otherism to define our base instincts and our political outcomes.
How about this guy, Barksdale Hortenstine Jr.? We are so excited that you are here, that you are part of this community. And every time I talk to you, I'm always like, why don't I talk to you every goddamn week? That was brilliantly done and said. The work and the passion with which you have to do it each and every day is so inspiring. And I don't know what else to add. I think that was just amazing. I love you for being here. Ryan Thompson, you have your wrong colored hand up. You have the Mickey Mouse yellow hand up, and I'm offended.
Yeah, I don't think they actually gave me a hand that would work. So
is that right? Is there only a one?
Yeah, it's just a yellow hand. It's a Simpson hand. Sorry,
it's a what?
It's a Simpsons hand.
It's a Simpsons hand. It's the Zoom. Wow.
No, it's not. You can change it. Mine's not yellow.
Oh, wait a second. We have a controversy here. Now, this is what we need to focus on. This is the kind of change Barksdale was just talking about. Go ahead, Ryan. Sorry.
So I mean, Barksdale, clearly you've seen like quite a bit of shit. I mean, what effect has that had on your mental and emotional well-being?
You see this fucking beard, man? Like, I have a 3-foot long beard. What do you mean with that? I've totally lost my goddamn mind. What are you talking about? Like, it's...
You work it not only, we can talk about racial injustice, but I think that one of the best things to talk about Barksdale with, and we really have to do a whole hour on this, is mental illness and how you run the mental. You can tell us everything about that issue, but I do want to ask one specific question, which I think doesn't get enough attention. I remember learning about this when reading Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, which is why, when people say, I know enough about race, I've learned enough. There's so much that even if you're a black person living in a black community that is over policed, you still don't know about how the system is rigged and how the laws are written. But the issue that she brings up and that we heard most recently with what's his name, Dwayne Wright, I think his name was. I think similar things happen in Ferguson, is how the police are funded through the petty bullshit tickets that they give out. How much of an issue is that? Where does that rank Barksdale, anyone else, and something that we could be concerned with and that we should change?
Let me take those two real quick. First, can I say, seriously, mental health is important. And, I was being a little silly, but, vicarious trauma and absorbed trauma, secondary trauma from my clients' experiences. If you're reading about a murder in New Orleans that has obvious mental health component to it, something that's just really weird and out there, that's my client. And I know and I will come to love that person and be very close to them and their family. And I will watch them traverse the most difficult part of their entire life. Some of them understand what's happening. Some of them don't. And all of them are human beings, and they deserve the dignity and respect of having someone stand by them and defend them in their darkest hour. And I'm proud to do that. But it does take the support of my family and the ability to unplug, and it is hard. And then quickly, Pete, I wanted to say, before I got into mental health and it became my whole life, one of the things that most angers me is the forfeiture rules where cops can pull people over and take their money, and then you have to prove to the cop how you got that money legally, because it's only happening to one type of person is having to justify where that money came from, how they got that vehicle, etc. And that and the writing tickets to pay for, that's all yesterday we had a guy sitting in jail because they ran his name after he was released so that the bondsman would get paid for they don't run his name for warrants until the bond is paid, so the bond will get paid, because once they ran his name and found out he wasn't eligible for release because he's on a parole hold, the bondsman wouldn't have got paid. So we had them say it out loud. They literally said it on the phone. We could hear them talking. This is what they do. Oh. And it's bonds, sheriffs, cops. They're all doing the same thing. It's all about money. Sorry to step on you, Cornell. I didn't mean to do that.
Go ahead, Cornell.
No, it's fine. I mean, I think it really is kind of a state by state, county by county situation, but there are tons of areas that make a lot of money off really chicken shit things. Like they literally, cops get bonuses and they get incentivized to do these small things so that, like their city, their county can make their respective budgets. So that absolutely is a significant thing. I don't know that it is everywhere, but it certainly is in a number of places. And no surprise, it's likely the most significant down south. Also, the last thing I want to say is I'm not trying to be a contrarian here, because I'm all about the positive message of being angry about the person who really should not be doing hard time. But I think we can do both. I think we can be angry about, cops getting like chicken shit sentences for really bad things, and also be mad at people doing chicken shit things and getting hard time. Like, we can do both. We don't have to choose one or the other. And for me, I'm at a point, and I think there's a bunch of people like me who are at a point where, I'm all about the positive, about like the affirmative. I mean, I really am. And I'm getting to a point where I don't think we have to choose. I don't think we have to put a positive spin on something. We can say, hey, both of these are really awful and they both need to be addressed. We don't need to ignore this to affirm this thing here. We can affirm this and also affirm that this other thing is crap as well.
So glad to have you here, Cornell. Really very well said. I appreciate that you're part of this community. It's been a long time since we've seen you. Psyched to have you joining us on this really important night. And Barksdale, what a surprise. I actually was thinking about you yesterday. I was thinking about you today. I kept thinking, I wonder what Barksdale thinks about this. And then you pinged me earlier, and I was like, this dude, I manifested him. I've been thinking about him, and we haven't talked in months. And so it's I'm psyched that you were able to join us tonight. This was really great, and I'm very happy that all of you joined us tonight. I do see Francis with her hand up, though, and I don't want to leave. And I see Mark has his hand up. So I want to make sure everybody just gets in here. If you got to go, you got to go. I got to wrap it up soon so I can post this and share it with everybody tomorrow, because I think this is great. Go ahead, Francis. Great to have you back, Amanda. Good to have all these faces. I love you guys. Go ahead. Sorry, Francis.
No problem. So, I was kind of going to piggyback off of Barksdale, and then Cornell, you actually said what I was going to say, where it's hard for me to just be open to saying we need to change everything, and people are getting too harsh of punishments for what they do. But in a case like Chauvin, where he murdered someone in cold blood for such a long period of time, I am not to the point where I'm like, oh, well, we should just be good across the board. I'm mad. I'm angry because people, like you said, Cornell, who do just chicken shit little things, get these long punishments. A guy had maybe a Coke can worth of crack, and they gave him 1,160 years in Tulsa. That doesn't even make any sense. But then somebody that murders someone in the streets in cold blood on camera, like, I dare you to do something. I'm not ready to just be like, well, we need to change everything. My bandwidth for that is gone. And I hope he burns in hell every day, like while he's in prison every day. That's just where I'm at. So
I feel you on that, Francis.
Punish that man.
I watched the documentary on the People versus the Klan, and they said in Birmingham, And then I'm looking at the dates. This was 1981. And by the time they went to trial, it was 1983. And I said, God damn, I was in the 4th grade. And they had the Klan riding through. And I'm like, they did kind of like what they did in New Orleans, where they pointed all these Klans members pointed to one guy and got that guy to the electric chair. And that was only the second guy in over 200 years that got a death sentence for killing a black man.
Someone, I think it was you, Ty, that said earlier that Derek Chauvin is a sacrificial lamb. And I thought that was one of the most important.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Right?
Why, Barksdale?
I think that's right. Well, I thought about it earlier today when we were waiting for the verdict, and a bunch of us were having a meeting about my mental health team, and we were trying to decide a few things, and then it kept coming up, and it was getting closer in time. We're all getting kind of anxious about it, and someone was talking about it. I was like, look, they're going to convict him on the smallest thing. They're going to convict him on some like responsive verdict, and that's it. And the only reason I thought they'd get him on the responsive verdict was just it's been so many in a row, and they've all gotten so much attention because people have been at home in front of their TVs.
But he was found guilty on all 3 counts. What do you mean? I don't know.
I was completely blown away.
Okay.
Immediately texted how excited I was to be wrong and how frequently that happens to be the case, and how this is exactly why it's great to be wrong. Is sometimes, you're wrong and a better thing happened than you were expecting, because he should be convicted of the crime. He did the crime. I don't have any problem with that. We start to disagree about what anyone should have after that. Yeah. That's fine. But if anyone should be in prison, a police officer who abuses his position of power should be in prison. I have a hard time getting to prison, but if that's an appropriate response, it's an appropriate response for someone in a place of power abusing it to torture and murder and kill or cause the death of, or whatever bullshit soft language they want to use for whichever case. But I thought this was the sacrificial lamb case for the responsive verdict because there's been so many, and because juries are made up of people, and no matter what, you could not possibly exist on this plane of existence this past 18 months, 3 years, 4 years, 400 years, but certainly in this last series of cases and not be like, holy shit, this is not good and we got to do something. Yeah. And so I thought this would be the one they did something. The fact that they hit him with the full conviction, I think, is a great statement. I think that's a really big deal. It shouldn't be understated. Those are big convictions against people who don't get convicted. But I also agree that it don't mean a damn thing if it isn't followed up with real reform, real change, and other convictions, especially for people who assisted in others getting away with the type of behavior he got away with. And like that, to me, I don't want to be controversial for being controversial, but to me, I'm actually more interested in the prosecution and public punishment of the people who facilitate the bad actors than I am the outrageous bad actors be punished. Like, I want the outrageous bad actors to be caught. I want them to be, but I want their facilitators and their assistants to be dragged in the public square and be made to be seen. It's his partner. It's his sergeant. It's their, unit's overseer. It's their county clerk's office or their sheriff or however they function there. It's their oversight. It's their independent police monitor board. It's their city council. It's their mayor. It's the entire political system that allows every single judge who accepted that man's testimony when it was clear he was lying, when it was clear he's being abusive to people, every single step along the way that he had some abusive power complaint lodged against him and someone walked him on it. Well, they can't really prove this one. Oh, okay, well, we'll give them a write-up for this. Every single one, those people are the ones who need to be dragged, because if those people get embarrassed, if those people get their lives upturned, then all the other people who facilitate this bullshit are going to start being like, maybe I could get in trouble for this. I'm really against the death penalty, hugely against the death penalty in every circumstance, okay? But if we had the death penalty in banking laws, we wouldn't have the kind of banking issues we have. We wouldn't have the kind of scams where houses are bundled with piece of shit and then sold up. That wouldn't happen because the risk analysis is what is actually happening there. And if I might be put to death because I'm trying to scam someone out of a few extra $1,000s, I ain't scamming anybody. You're going to know every single thing I do. You're going to see it in giant letters. I'm going to spell it out for you. But instead, we're talking about executing people. We ain't talking about executing cops who execute our black brothers and sisters or our brown brothers. We're talking about executing black and brown kids who killed some white person, right? That's the reality. That's the statistics. Okay. And so, to me, it's about getting the in-between people and showing them there's consequences to their silence and there's consequences to their acquiescence and assistance. And that, that's where you actually get change, because there aren't, I'm not a fan of police in general, but there aren't like a ton of like renegade crazy cops out there trying to do vendetta justice at night. But the bad ones that are out there get away with it because tons of quiet and helpful partners and supervisors and boards that oversee them and all this stuff that we've done that never counts for it. It just doesn't work because we continue to try to use, who would allow you to hire a gang's enforcement team to police the gang? Who would say okay, let's get JoJo the enforcer, the hitter, the guy who goes and kills people for us. That guy's in charge of making sure no one in the gang does anything wrong again. And we'll just let the community know this is the one that's going to make sure we do it right. Nobody would buy that. But we're all fine with letting police do it for themselves. Police are a gang. They are given their authority to be a gang by the citizenry of the community they are policing. That we give them the authority to be the one legal gang. Then why in the world would you let the gang member police the gang? What?
Preach, says Cornell. I've got to wrap it up. Who else who really desperately wants to get in here that didn't? I want to give you the final opportunity, and then I would invite Vicky to sing Amazing Grace while John Carroll plays music. Is that an appropriate song? I just know that you can belt. But if there's an appropriate, I think it'd be amazing if you would sing to us, but I don't want to put you on the spot. Anybody else before we go? Going once.
Just one question, Pete, to our people, friends of color. Is there any way that we should be cognizant of being a better ally in these coming days and weeks?
Anybody want to take that?
Don't be afraid to make a mistake.
Karen?
Don't be afraid to make a mistake. You might not know everything to say, but saying nothing, the silence is worse. So as long as you're expressing kindness and concern, I think that's good enough.
Thank you for that, Karen. Who else wants something?
Pete, you out there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I coming through?
Yes, Mark. Go ahead. Sorry, Mark.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm from Brooklyn Center, and we just had the Dante Wright shooting. And Minnesota we've convicted one policeman in the past, and that was Mohammed Noor, who killed a white woman. He was a rookie cop. He went to jail, right? We just convicted Chauvin. I can't tell you how relieved our community is, but we're not happy. I mean, this is the tip of an iceberg. But I got a couple of takeaways that I haven't heard yet that I'd like to toss at you. Our new mayor, Mike Elliott, really good guy. He stood up and told the state, we have something called Operation Safety Net. He told the state to stand down. And we had a very peaceful night of protest. The next night, it was peaceful right up until they decided to start firing flashbangs at the media. All right. The media were getting hit with flashbangs, and then they put on some kind of blocker so there was no Wi-Fi, so they couldn't get the story out. And they stormtrooped us like you wouldn't believe. All right. It was a major, huge, ugly. The next night, peaceful. It's not the people that we should be fearing. It's the cops. We've got a town right now full. People came, military came from Pennsylvania. Cops came from Ohio. This is Minneapolis. They're all in town, and they were made completely irrelevant by what we can only call justice. We only call it justice instead of consequences because we haven't seen it often enough.
Really well said, Mark. Mark Anderson is a guy who I've talked to many times, whose life story is fantastic. A great guy, a super talented musician. Another one. So many great artists. I really appreciate your perspective. Thank you for that, Mark. I forgot that you're from Minneapolis. I reached out to Adam today, but yeah, we have a lot of people, several people from Minneapolis. Really well said. Thank you for that. Anybody else want to answer Corey's question about being an ally or anything else before we wrap it up?
Just stay learning.
Stay learning.
Stay learning. Go on YouTube and listen to Dr. King. Listen to all his speeches.
And stay teaching. I'm an old white guy. I don't go to the rally because they don't need to hear from me again.
Well, you're a pretty talented musician. You could break that violin out, and I think they probably liked it.
It's not my voice that they need to hear.
Right.
They've heard from wonderful voices. If you don't watch Unicorn Riot, you're missing out. Watch Unicorn Riot. They'll keep you up to date on everything. But I can teach old white guys that I know that I don't respect because of what they say, what they do when they think they're talking to one of theirs. All right? I can educate them. Yeah. I can't educate you all that I don't have a reason to. You already know everything I'm going to tell you. I don't need to be there. I need to be talking to the community that I face on a daily basis because they're the problem. They're the problem.
I try to focus just on telling women how to think and behave.
Well, that's awesome. That's why we get along.
Not people of color.
That's a natural. That's why you have no hair left.
I would never. Is that why? I can get it back. Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to piggyback on that, it's really important. When I first got on, Barksdale was actually talking about, doing things locally. And locally is important, but I think literally the most local you can get is yourself. And like checking yourself and say, okay, what are the times that I feel uncomfortable talking about some of these things? Who are the people that I don't want to say these things to that I know really need to hear it? And those are the places you've got to go. The more we're comfortable with being uncomfortable, especially with ourselves, the more open we are to actually learning something new. So, going local is great, but I think the more local you can go, which is literally yourself, the better.
Well said.
That's so great. Cornell, that's amazing. Like the uncomfort they feel.
Yeah, Cornell ran for office. And, he is, like a lot of you, the change that you want to see in the world. What a great, great group of people that joined us here tonight. I cannot thank you enough for being here tonight. You're all so special to me and increasingly to each other. Thank you very much for joining us. Does anybody, Vicky, do you want to sing? Can you belt out a little bit? Or am I putting you on the spot? No, you don't want to sing? No.
Do I ever not want to sing, Pete?
No, I don't. Yeah, I listen. I don't know.
You've known me for 100 years.
These situations, maybe the mic doesn't work. I don't know. John Carroll, do you have anything that you could, I don't know. Can we hear you both at the same time? Does that work?
You can start, Vicky, and I'll just hang with you.
Yeah.
All right.
And we'll get in the way.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Peace be with with all of you. I love you. That was amazing, Vicky, John. Thank you. Thank all of you for your contributions, or if just being here and listening. And if you didn't get to say anything or something, just reach out to me. We'll be back here Thursday night for another hangout. That was just so special. I hope nobody minds, but I want to post that all for tomorrow. Special thank you to Barksdale. Give it up for Barksdale Hortenstine, whose daughter jumped in the frame. Those of you that brought your kids, I see him. Leah Bronwyn's daughter, I saw her earlier. Thank you guys very much. I'm going to go post this for tomorrow for everybody to share in it. I love you guys. Good night. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. We have some amazing, thoughtful, brilliant, passionate folks who are part of this community, and I invite you to be a member as well. If you're not already, go to patreon.com/PeteDominic, sign up and join us. We also have the Discord platform always going. You're never alone if you are a member of the stand-up community. Tomorrow is another day. Let's make it a good one. Thanks for listening today. I mean, maybe you listened in the morning, so you have the whole rest of the day. Make it a good one, too. Well, you know what I mean. Good night. I love you. Take it away, John Carroll.
Stand up, let the brave meet the challenge, let the weak flee. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think your driving wheels been leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. You got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw the land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.